Okay, this is the Algebra 2 video lesson for section 5.3, solving polynomial equations. So just like we were solving quadratic equations, we're now moving on to solving polynomial equations, and we're going to start with factoring. So we're going to solve these just like we did with quadratic equations, just they're not quadratic, we're just going to factor like we learned in the last section. So here we'll just get everything on the same side, so subtract this negative 3x. So this becomes 2x cubed minus 5x squared minus 3x equals 0. And then let's just factor this. So they all have an x, so we can pull out the x, which leaves 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. And then we can just factor this last part. We did this last section, so hopefully this isn't new. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, and negative 5 it has to add up to. So what is this, negative 6 and 1? Yeah. Okay, and because this isn't 1, we can't do the shortcut. So we'll have to split the negative 5 into negative 6x and 1x. And then do our GCF of these two, which is 2x, and this is just 1. So this becomes 2x, oh sorry, let's hold on. Okay, here we go, 2x, and then x minus 3, and then plus 1, and x minus 3. So this is x times 2x plus 1 times x minus 3 equals 0. So that's how we factor this. And it's important to get this, right, this one side 0. Then you can just factor. So then let's set each factor to 0. X equals 0, that's a factor. This is a factor. 2x plus 1 equals 0. And then this last factor, x minus 3 equals 0. And then just solve. So 2x equals negative 1, x equals negative 1/2, and then x equals 3. So here are our 3 zeros that we solved. And they're actually all real. We don't have any imaginary ones. We'll get to that in a little bit. Yep, that's the solution using factoring. Okay, and then this next one here, I will also do with you solving the solutions using factoring. So here, let's get this term on this side. See here, this is the highest exponent, so we're going to keep that positive. So this becomes 3x to the 4th minus 6x cubed plus 12x squared equals 0. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is pull out a GCF. It looks like they all have a 3 and 2 x's. So let's pull out 3x squared, and we're left with an x squared minus 2x and plus 4 equals 0. And then we're going to see if we can factor this. We're looking for two numbers that multiply to 4, add to negative 2. We have 1 and 4. They need to both be negative. That's negative 5, and then negative 2, negative 2. Those add up to negative 4. So this does not factor. So this is actually the factored form. So then we can take each factor and set it equal to 0. So the 3 we ignore because 3 will never be 0. X squared equals 0. We solve that. And then x squared minus 2x plus 4 equals 0. We're going to have to solve that. So this, we just take the square root of both sides. So x is 0. So that is one of our zeros. It's actually also two of our zeros because x is squared. And then we need to solve this because it doesn't factor. We're going to do the quadratic formula. Maybe we could do, I bet it's actually easier to do complete the square. So let's do it that way. You could do quadratic formula if you want. You guys know how to plug that in. But let me just show you how this can be done with completing the square, right? We just take our b, divide it by 2, and then square it. So this becomes negative 1 squared. So we just add 1 to both sides. And then this becomes this negative 1, x minus 1 squared equals, and this becomes negative 3. So then we can just take the square root of both sides. And this becomes x minus 1 equals plus or minus, and we can just pull out that negative as an I, root 3, and then add 1. Oh goodness, this is so much easier. I did it with quadratic formula before when I thought you guys had to do this on your own. This is way easier. So that was way less steps. So really, if if this is an even number, you're b, and this is a 1, you're a. Solving by completing the square is much easier than the quadratic formula, or just quicker. So here are well, really 4 solutions. There are 2 zeros because of that squared right here, 2 zeros, and then 2 here when it's plus and when it's minus. All right, so you can get imaginary solutions here. Okay, so here is one to try on your own. This is kind of already, a little bit already factored, but not all the way. So factor it a little bit more and then set your factors equal to 0, solve for x, and get your answer. Try this first and then check back for the solution. Okay, so hopefully that wasn't too bad. You know, even if you didn't notice that this needed to be factored to x minus 1, x plus 1, you could have also just set this equal to 0. And then when you take the square root of both sides, you would get the plus or minus 1, which is what we got here when I factored it out. This doesn't factor, so you can just set that straight equal to 0, and then you get your imaginary factors. You take the square root of negative 4. The square root of 4 is just 2, and the square root of negative 1 is I. So there are your 4 roots, 1 and plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 2i. Okay, so here is just a little summary of how to solve polynomial by factoring. Factoring out the GCF, that's the easiest thing to do first. Just look for, it just makes it easier to factor everything else. Factoring trinomials here, when that works like that, that works. This, you can kind of do the same way as this. This is kind of the same thing. And this is the same thing too. A lot of these, though, can just also be solved by just setting equal to 0 and solve it because of the square root method. This one won't really come up. Actually, if there's no GCF and there are 4 terms, you should look for this. And what you do here is you look at the first 2 terms, pull out a GCF, look at the last 2 terms, pull out the GCF of those 2 terms, and then if these two, what you're left with matches, that means that's a factor, and then whatever's left is your other factor. And then this one actually comes up in the homework twice. So make sure you can go back to this in your notes. When you see, I think there's one that's like x cubed minus 1,000, which is 10 cubed. So then you'd have to, you couldn't solve it just by the square root method. You have to take into account this factor. And there's also one like this. So keep that in mind, how to factor this. And I will give you these on a test, so you don't need to memorize them. Okay, so with that in mind, oh, actually, that's going to come up. What I just told you is going to be on the homework. We're going to get some examples of that, so good. So with that summary in mind, let's start solving these. Oh, this one comes up twice in the homework too. So I'll show you how to do these. So you subtract 4 on both sides. Again, you just want one side to be 0 for this factoring. X squared minus 4. Okay, so here, it kind of looks similar when we have our x squared and our x here, but it's x to the 4th and x squared. What we can do here is kind of a little substitution. We can just call u x squared. That means this is, right, since this is x squared squared, and this is just x squared, right, we can just substitute u in for this. Oh, that didn't look good. Let's just use a different color. The u in here. And we can just make this u squared minus 3u minus 4. Then this looks familiar. We can use our factoring. What 2 numbers multiply to negative 4 and add to negative 3? Negative 4 and 1. So this becomes u minus 4 and u plus 1 equals 0. But remember, u is x squared. So then plug that x squared back in to the u, x squared, minus 4, x squared plus 1. Maybe you notice this is supposed to be x minus 2, x plus 2. Maybe you don't, but you can just set your factors equal to 0. This one's still going to get you x squared minus 4 equals 0. Your plus or minus 2, which is what this would give you, x equals 2, x equals negative 2. So there's our 2 there. And then this one here, x squared plus 1 equals 0 is going to give us an imaginary one because we have x squared equals negative 1. So this means x equals plus or minus I. So there's our other 2. Okay. So this method comes up, I think, twice in the homework. So you get some good practice with that. And then for this one, you're going to use the same things. It's going to be a little bit different, but because it's not going to be as obvious, but use the same u equals x squared first, and then solve this, and then plug the x squared back in. See if you can do it with this. Press pause, try it on your own for a little bit. If you're confused, just come back for the solution and I'll walk you through it. Okay. Okay, so the first thing hopefully you did was see that you need to subtract 16 on both sides so that you have one side equal to 0. And then, like I told you to do, make your u equal to x squared. This becomes u squared. Then it's a difference of two squares, which factor to u minus 4, u plus 4. Then you can plug the x squared back in. This again factors here. And then you can just set this equal to, or right here, you could set that both of these equal to 0. You would have got these two when you did this one. And then here, they're imaginary, so you'd get plus or minus 2i. So there are 4 solutions. Okay. Moving on, up just some more. So here we would subtract 2x squared from both sides. And then pull out an x. And then check to see if this factors. I don't think it does. Here it does, minus 4 plus 2, yeah. It does, so this becomes x minus 4, and x plus 2. So this is x equals 0, 4, and negative 2. And then this one, I think you guys should do this one on your own. I think this is another one where you're going to use the u substitution as your x squared. So try this one on your own first, and then check back for the solution. Okay, so hopefully you brought this over to this side, got your u to equal x squared, then factored it and found out that it factors like this, then plug your x squared back in, and then set those both equal to 0. Get plus or minus root 5 or plus or minus I root 2. Okay, and then the last thing we're going to do is solve by graphing. And so what we want to do before you do any graphing is get everything on the same side, just like we've been doing. So here my highest degree is 3, so let's keep that positive. Let's subtract 4x squared and subtract x. So this becomes 0, and then this side is x cubed minus 4x squared minus x plus 5. Okay, and then this is what you're going to put into Desmos, just this piece. So let me do that right now and bring it in. Okay, and then you can see here that once I plug in this, right, x squared cubed minus 4x squared minus x plus 5, you can see the graph, and then you just click on the dots on Desmos when they cross the x-axis. So you can see the solutions here are negative 1.09, .16, and 3.93. You can just round to the hundreds, doesn't really matter. You can round to the thousandths if you want. And then that's our solution. So do the same thing here. Put this in Desmos. Make sure first, right, get everything on the same side, then put that into Desmos. And then figure out what your, find out where it crosses the x-axis, and those are your answers. So try that and then check back for your solution. Okay, so here you can see this is what your function is. If you put it in Desmos, you can see there's only 1 0, and it crosses the x-axis. It's just at that one spot, so the answer is negative 1.84. And that's it. That's all that takes. And then, yeah, time for practice. Enjoy.